I'm going to tell you exactly how I turned the woman I thought I'd marry into a social pariah, a professional failure, and a disappointment to her own blood, all within the span of 72 hours. Before I get into the visceral details of the 3 a.m. discovery that shattered my life, you need to know the ending. I am currently sitting in a sun-drenched apartment miles away from her while she is likely scrubbing floors or dodging the glares of every person who once called her a friend, trapped in a hell of her own making. They say living well is the best revenge, but they're wrong. Watching a hypocrite choke on the truth they tried to bury is far more satisfying. This isn't just a story about a cheating girlfriend. It's a manual on how to dismantle a liar who thinks you're too pathetic to fight back. The silence in our shared apartment that Tuesday night wasn't the peaceful quiet of a sleeping home. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket of unseen tension that pressed against my chest with the weight of 1,000 unspoken suspicions. It was 3 a.m., the witching hour for the anxious and the betrayed, the time when the ghosts of our doubts finally stop whispering and start screaming. Beside me, she slept with a rhythmic, soft breathing that was the very picture of manufactured innocence, her face calm in a way that felt like a personal insult to the turmoil rotting inside my gut. I lay there, staring at the ceiling where the shadows from the street lamps danced like ghosts mocking my ignorance, feeling that physical, nausea-inducing knot, the biological alarm system that predates language, the lizard brain telling you that the predator is already in the cave wearing the skin of the person you love. I had spent the better part of a month trying to gaslight myself into believing I was the problem. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my own insecurities were projecting onto her newfound independence. But the signs were there, subtle as spiderwebs and just as sticky. It was the way her phone became an extension of her hand, always face down, always locked, and the way she would angle the screen away with a practiced casual flick of the wrist if a notification chimed while we were eating dinner. It was the sudden, frantic need for privacy in the bathroom that lasted 40 minutes at a time, and the late nights at the restaurant where she worked as a server under a manager she once called a total creep, but now defended as misunderstood. It was a tale as old as time, a cliché I had foolishly thought we were above because we had real communication. My hand moved on its own that night, trembling with a mix of dread and a dark, clinical curiosity as I reached across the expanse of the mattress toward her nightstand. The phone felt cold like a weapon, and I hesitated for a fraction of a second, the last moment of my life where I could still pretend everything was okay, and then I picked it up. She hadn't changed her passcode, a detail that spoke volumes about her arrogance. She didn't think I had the spine to look. I unlocked it, the blue light blinding me for a second, and I opened iMessage. The world didn't end with a bang, it ended with a scroll. The conversation with her manager wasn't just friendly banter or even a mistake. It was a deluge of filth. It was visceral, explicit, and utterly dehumanizing. They had exchanged graphic descriptions of what they wanted to do to each other in the walk-in fridge while she was on shift, the very shifts where she hadn't texted me for hours because she was so busy. There were photo shares that left nothing to the imagination, and concrete plans to hang out after work while I was at home cooking her dinner. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me lightheaded and cold in the middle of a warm room. I didn't wait to process the grief. I shook her awake, the adrenaline overriding the heartbreak, and shoved the glowing screen into her sleepy, disoriented face. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice a jagged edge of itself. The transition from sleep to panic was instant. Her eyes went wide, reflecting the blue light of her own infidelity. And then came the performance. She sat up, clutching the sheets to her chest as if she were the victim, and launched into the desperate, scrambling defense of the guilty. She begged, she pleaded, and she swore on her mother's life that it was just a flirtation that got out of hand. "I'll block him," she sobbed, grabbing my hand with clammy, desperate fingers. "I swear I'll never speak to him again unless it's about an order at work. I love you. Please don't throw this away. I'll fix it." I looked at her, this woman I had planned a future with, and I saw fear. But like a fool, blinded by the years we had spent together, I mistook her fear of consequences for remorse. I wanted the pain to stop, so I gave her the ultimatum. Cut him off completely, or we are done." She agreed instantly, nodding vigorously while wiping snot and tears from her face, promising a loyalty she had already incinerated. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, watching the sun come up and feeling like a man who had barely survived a shipwreck. The next day was a blur of exhaustion and lingering suspicion, a gray haze where I played the part of the forgiving boyfriend while my mind replayed every text I had read. Trust is like a mirror. Once you shatter it, you can glue it back together, but the cracks are always there, distorting the reflection of everything you see. Every time her phone buzzed, I felt a spike of adrenaline that tasted like copper in the back of my throat. I watched her block him, watched her send a curt text saying they were done, and I allowed myself to breathe, thinking we were in the rebuilding phase. It hadn't even been 24 hours. That evening, she went to take a shower, the steam billowing out from under the door. I sat on the edge of the bed listening to the water running, a sound that usually signaled the end of a long day, but now sounded like white noise over a crime scene. The knot in my stomach was back, tighter and more insistent than before. "Check it," the voice in my head whispered. "Check it again." I walked into the bathroom, the humidity clinging to my skin like a second layer of sweat. Her phone was sitting on the counter, unlocked, playing a playlist of songs we used to call ours. I picked it up, and if the first discovery broke my heart, the second one incinerated it. She hadn't blocked him, she had simply changed his name in her contacts to a female friend's name. I scrolled through the fresh messages sent less than an hour ago while she was sitting on the couch next to me. She was recounting the events of the previous night to him, but she wasn't expressing regret. "He caught us," she wrote, followed by a string of laughing emojis. "It was so hilarious. You should have seen him crying. He looked so pathetic, babe. He's such a doormat. Don't worry, I'll play the good girlfriend for a bit until he calms down and I can get my things in order. He's just an option until I figure things out with us. Everything I have with him is just a plaything." I stood bare in the thick steam, staring at the word pathetic until it burned into my retinas. Something inside me snapped. Not a loud crack, but a quiet, catastrophic failure of my empathy. The man who loved her died in that bathroom. The man who wanted to believe in redemption evaporated into the mist. In his place rose something cold, something calculated, and something terrifyingly calm. I realized then that I wasn't a partner to her. I was an appliance, a utility, a doormat to be walked on until a better floor was found. I put the phone back down exactly where it was. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I walked out of the bathroom and sat in the living room, waiting for her to come out with her hair wrapped in a towel, smiling that fake, practiced smile. I smiled back. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew that a scene would only give her the chance to lie again. I needed her to believe I was the doormat she thought I was, so I could pull the rug out from under her entire world. I sat at my computer that night and waited for her to fall asleep, her breathing once again mimicking the rhythm of the innocent. Once I was sure she was out, I went to work with the precision of a forensic accountant. I took her phone and I documented everything. I didn't just take screenshots of the cheating, I took screenshots of the mockery. I captured the timestamps that proved she was sexting him while she was supposed to be working, and more importantly, while she was sitting right next to me. I created a digital dossier, a PDF of destruction, and I backed it up in 3 different places. The next phase of my plan was the most personal. It was moving week for her mother. Her mother was a sweet, oblivious woman who had always treated me like the son she never had, and I had promised weeks ago to help her move into her new condo. My girlfriend, my ex, though she didn't know it yet, had conveniently claimed she was scheduled for extra shifts to avoid the heavy lifting, leaving me to do the manual labor alone. The irony was so thick I could taste it. For the next 3 days, I hauled heavy oak dressers, disassembled bed frames, and sweated in the sweltering summer heat for the woman who raised my betrayer. Every box I lifted fueled my resolve. Every time her mother thanked me, telling me I was such a good man and that her daughter was so lucky, I felt a twisted sense of anticipation. I wasn't just moving furniture, I was setting the stage for a reckoning. On the final day of the move, I stood in the middle of her mother's new, pristine living room. The last box was down, and the house smelled of lemon polish and new beginnings. Her mom was beaming, offering me a glass of cold lemonade. "I don't know what we would have done without you," she said, her voice full of genuine affection. "You're a saint, truly." I took a sip of the lemonade, looked her in the eye, and said, "I'm just glad I could help you see things clearly." I pulled out my phone. I didn't hand it to her. I hit send on an email I had drafted to her mother's address, and then I sent the same images via text. "Actually," I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion, "I think you should see what your daughter has been up to while I was here helping you move." I didn't want to believe it, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. I watched the notification pop up on her iPad on the kitchen counter. I watched her face change from a smile to confusion, then to horror as she began to scroll through the filth and the mockery. I didn't stay to hear her cry. I had more stops on this tour of destruction. I had access to her social media accounts, Instagram and Snapchat, because she had given me the passwords months ago as a gesture of transparency after a minor argument about boundaries. I logged in. I didn't delete anything. That would be too simple. I created a story on both platforms, a highlight reel of her infidelity and her cruelty. I uploaded the screenshots where she called me pathetic, where she laughed at my tears, and where she detailed her exploits with her manager. I captioned it, "For everyone wondering why I'm moving out today, here is the hilarious truth." Within minutes, the views started climbing. I knew her coworkers followed her. I knew her friends followed her. I knew the manager's wife, if he had one, would eventually see it. Then I turned my sights on her career. We lived in an at-will state, but most corporations have a very strict policy regarding sexual conduct between managers and subordinates, especially when it happens on the clock. I found the emails for the restaurant owner and the regional general manager. I drafted a professional, cold email attaching the evidence of the time theft and the graphic nature of their workplace interactions. I highlighted the timestamps showing them sexting while they were both clocked in and supposed to be managing a busy floor. Finally, I sent the package to the lover himself, the manager, with a simple note. "She thinks you're her future. You should know she calls you a plaything when she's trying to convince me to stay. Good luck with the investigation." I walked out of her mother's house, sat in my car, and just watched the front door. It took exactly 4 minutes for the first explosion. My phone began to vibrate with such intensity it nearly danced off the passenger seat. First, it was the manager, panicked, threatening, then pleading. He knew his career was over. Then the silence at the suburban street was broken by the sound of her mother's voice from inside the house, a shrill, heartbroken sound. Then my ex called. I answered on the first ring, leaning back in my seat. "Hello," I said, my voice as cheerful as a morning talk show host. "Babe?" She was hyperventilating, her voice a mess of static and tears. My mom just called me. She's screaming. She said you sent her." "What did you do? Why can't I log into my Instagram?" I could hear the sounds of the restaurant in the background, the clinking of silverware, the chatter of customers who had no idea their server was currently imploding. I did exactly what a doormat does. I cleaned up the mess. "Check your email, or better yet, go talk to your manager. I think he's having a really bad day too." You posted it? Everyone can see it," she shrieked, the sound of her ego shattering audible even through the phone. "Take it down. My coworkers, my boss, you're ruining my life." I laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it was a real, honest laugh. "I didn't ruin it. I just published the autobiography you wrote. Isn't it hilarious? That's what you said, right? That I was funny?" The line went dead. I drove home, but not to our apartment. I had already moved my essential belongings to a storage unit and a friend's spare room while she was at work the day before. The fallout was a slow-motion car crash that provided a soundtrack to my new life for weeks. She tried to do damage control, claiming I was a vengeful hacker and the messages were AI generated, but the specificity of the details and the reaction of her mother made that lie impossible to sustain. She couldn't walk into a room without wondering who had seen her naked or who had read her calling her partner a plaything. But the final twist, the one that truly closed the book on my feelings for her, came about a month later through a mutual acquaintance. I had done some digging on the manager, the other guy. It turned out he wasn't just a work fling, he was a serial predator of waitresses, a man with a long history of blowing up his own life. More importantly, he was a single father who had cheated on the mother of his child while she was pregnant. When I found this out, everything clicked into place. My ex-girlfriend's entire personality was built on the trauma of her father cheating on her mother. She spent years posturing as a moral crusader against infidelity, claiming she hated cheaters more than anything in the world. And yet, she had willingly, enthusiastically become the other woman for a man who was a carbon copy of the father she claimed to despise. She wasn't a victim of her past, she was a willing participant in its cycle. She was a hypocrite of the highest order, a woman who looked in the mirror and saw a saint, but looked at her phone and saw a predator. I realized then that I hadn't just lost a girlfriend, I had escaped a black hole of narcissism. She had to keep working at that restaurant because she couldn't find another job with her reputation in tatters, forced to face the manager who now hated her for ruining his career, and the coworkers who knew every sordid detail of her private life. Every shift was a walk of shame. I, on the other hand, woke up in a quiet room with no secrets, no lizard brain alarms, and no doormats, because she was right about one thing. The truth is hilarious, especially when it's the only thing you have left.